I think it is noon. So greetings to everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm not surprised. My name is Tom McClusky. And if you can't tell from the picture behind me, I'm with the National March for Life in Washington, D.C. As many of you know, today, April 15th, would have been the first ever official Connecticut March for Life in your state capital. Unfortunately, we could not do that today, of course, because of everything going on. And our prayers are with everybody out there right now. We're all dealing with this. We're all dealing with this together. While parts of our life are on pause, we realize that when it comes to the issue of life, we can't put that on pause. We need to continue advocating for the cause of life, especially during these times, and especially because those who advocate for the opposite of life, death, are also still continuing advocating. So what we're hoping to do here today is to let you know a little bit about the issues and also how to contact your legislators during this time, not only while you're working from home, but also while you're, once this is lifted, and this will be lifted, and that we can lobby in person as well. So on behalf of the March for Life, as well as the Connecticut Catholic Conference and the Family Institute of Connecticut, I do want to welcome you to the first Connecticut Login for Life. Periodically, you'll see that we'll have poll questions. Part of it is, in a sense, to get how comfortable you are about lobbying, because while I'm the lobbyist for March for Life, you all are the lobbyists for life by participating today. And we want to try to humanize the process so it's easier for you. And if you have any questions throughout, please submit the questions to the Q&A box throughout, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. And those that we can't, hopefully we can address online. Now, first off, I'd like to introduce Lisa Maloney. She's the president of the Connecticut Pregnancy Care Coalition and director of the Carenet Pregnancy Resource Center in New London, and talk about being on the front lines, especially right now. While you're thinking about people to help out, the Pregnancy Care Center should be at the very top of your list. So Lisa, I'd like to hand it over to you so you can discuss some of the issues going on today.
Thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I'm excited to see the numbers on the attendees. They just keep going up each minute that goes by. So it's very exciting to see that, especially since, you know, we were just so heartbroken to have to cancel the actual March for Life. We were all looking forward to it. So I just want to give you a little bit of history. So the Connecticut Pregnancy Care Coalition formed a little over 4.5 years ago, right after NARAL, Pro-Choice Connecticut, issued one of their documents that they titled "The Right to Lie," and in that they attacked pregnancy centers, accusing us of just really bad behavior. And sadly enough, is what they had done is they sent people in pretending to need our services, using our time that we would have given to clients who really needed our services, but they would send them in there, and they would have fake stories and fake urine, and I mean, it seems ludicrous to believe, but it actually happened. And then they left, and they took everything we said and they twisted it, and they took this report that they created and brought it to legislators. And so all these bills that we've been fighting the past few years, and praise God, successfully, we've been able to fight it from becoming law. All these bills that have been proposed have been based on these reports. No actual complaints filed against pregnancy centers. They accuse us of things like, dressing in lab coats and pretending to be medical staff and giving fake information to women, and delaying access to reproductive care. I should take that back, delaying access to time-sensitive care, which is not the case at all. any pregnancy center that is part of the coalition, if there's medical services going on, they're doing so under the license of medical professionals. All of our information we give to clients is sourced, and they can check up on it. So how does this help, those of you who are listening? One of the things that we did as a coalition is we would continually individually invite the legislators to tour the pregnancy centers, to come in and see what we're doing, and show them our exit surveys. Most of these centers in Connecticut have been around close to 30 plus years, and not one complaint has been filed in the state of Connecticut against a pregnancy center. And that, I think, is a testament of just the work that the pregnancy centers are doing, and the care that we are giving to each and every person who walks into our doors, each and every person who calls, even those who come in claiming to need our services and being what we would call a fake client. So if you as an attendee are listening and reach out to your legislator and say, hey, I know of this pregnancy center that's in your district, or even if it's not in their district but serves people in their district, encourage them to accept our invitation to come for a tour and to talk with us, because these legislators are basing their decisions on these false reports that are being put out there. And they're basing their decisions on these lies. And I'm not paying attention to the time, so Tom, if you just kind of like wave to me when I'm out of time. I think I just have a few more minutes, but I just want to share, I believe it was March 9th, right before the state closed down, we had a public hearing on the SB 144, which is the bill that they brought forth this year, and it's an act concerning deceptive practices of pregnancy centers. And basically what they're saying is, we cannot say pregnant, we can help, if we're not going to offer abortion. They want to limit what our advertising looks like. They want to tell us what we can say and what we can't say. And if we don't comply, then they would fine us daily until we fix it. And in a sense, it would put us out of business. We're not, we don't have a money tree on our property. We don't have the funding that Planned Parenthood has or the abortion clinics have, because all of our services are free to our clients. We're not charging for our services, and we're dependent on the generosity of our donors. So at this hearing, some student from Yale brought up the abortion pill reversal. And in the conversation, what the legislators heard is that we were giving out medication that did not have FDA approval. And so they left out key points. Is one, right now there are no pregnancy centers that are doing this service. There's a couple of them that are being trained, but the FDA approval is given for that particular medication. What's happening is that medication is being used as an off-label use for the abortion pill reversal. And that is something that physicians do all the time with many different medications. And so see how they just take things and they twist it. And, these legislators, they get, passionate because they want to help, they want to care for people, but yet they're being fed all kinds of lies. So really, what we need from our donors, from our supporters, is to have the conversations with their legislators and tell them, hey, I know these people. I know this pregnancy center. I support this pregnancy center. And this is what the truth is. And, we can out-truth the enemy. And that's our hope, is that, we have stuff to back up what we're saying. They do not have anything to back up their charges. They have no formal complaints. And so I would just encourage people to speak up. We had hoped that by having this march in the middle of their session, they would look out the window and they would see, hey, there are pro-lifers in Connecticut, and there's a good number of them, and we need to listen to them. And so I guess the next best thing is to flood their email boxes and flood their voicemails with statements, support the pregnancy centers and leave them alone.
Thanks, Lisa. And I think both the Connecticut Catholic Conference and the Family Institute of Connecticut, I think, can help people connect with their state legislators. It always does surprise me. I mean, the other side, I think they are so used to lying that they assume that we do it as well.
Right.
But I've always just been shocked. And with the next issue we're going to talk about, it's the same thing about how a state like Connecticut, where, I mean, I deal with the National Congress where it goes back and it's gone back and forth over the last 20 years or so, which party is controlling. And it's just, what do you attribute to the success that you've had in fighting this in the past? And not that we should rest on our laurels, because we have to keep on fighting. Because every time we win, it's always next. I always get the email from Peter Wolfgang, okay, we won this time, but next year we got to be ready. And he's right, because they're coming back again. What do you attribute the successes to?
Well, first and foremost, we're all faith-based clinics, and so we attribute a lot of our success to God. That He's in charge of this. But also, I think just the united front. Forming this coalition back in 2015 has gone such a long way in uniting our pregnancy centers, that we're speaking with one voice. We're all saying the same thing. We're all supporting each other, and we're also holding each other accountable if there's something that we think that is going on that might look kind of, not so sure about that. We will talk and discuss things and run things by each other, checking on each other's website. Hey, you might want to look at that wording or whatever. But I think it's the unity that we're putting forth. I think, and the bottom line is in following what God is pointing, directing us, we stand on the side of truth. And sometimes truth takes a beating, but in the end, it always wins.
Well, thank you. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, the whole message of the March for Life is always unity. When you have everywhere from local ones, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of the National March. And as I keep on saying, it's only been postponed, the Connecticut March for Life. And we'll look again at how to open it back up. And before all this, I was allowed to travel out to, when we were still allowed to travel and all, I was actually out in California right before everything broke. And I heard the phrase, the pro-life movement is unified but not uniform. And I love that. That
is great.
We all might have different approaches, but we all have the same goal for at the end. And that's to allow for life to flourish. And for that life, going into our next speaker, we are a people who, from the womb. Oh, first off, you're going to be getting a lot of poll questions right now. I would ask that you take the time so we can better know how to serve you, both at the March for Life, but even more important, your allies on the state level. Especially at the Connecticut Catholic Conference and the Family Institute of Connecticut. So as you're answering those poll questions, our next speaker unfortunately had to join us by video, because not unfortunately that it's Passover. However, she could not participate because of Passover. Many of you though who are in the fighting against physician-assisted suicide should be familiar with the name of Cathy Ludlum, who is an active voice in that fight. And this is another issue where it's hard to believe that there are differences of opinion on it. And she couldn't join us. However, she has prepared a video, and there will be a handout in the box as well, a Q&A box for you to download. So if we're ready for the video.
Good afternoon. My name is Cathy Ludlum, and I appreciate this opportunity to share with you some of the reasons why the disability community is opposed to physician-assisted suicide. But I want to start by giving you a couple of lobbying tips that I think you will find useful in talking with legislators. It's great to have religious conviction and faith, and those are good things in your personal life. But when you talk to legislators, you really want to be talking from a standpoint of disability arguments and experiences against assisted suicide. You don't want the legislators to shut down, and if our goal is to stop assisted suicide from being passed, everywhere all over the country, people have found that the disability arguments really do the best job. So I'm going to share some of those with you. The first one is that those of us with disabilities already have a difficult time getting access to health care. It's difficult for us to get there already, and when we do get there, too often, particularly if we have a severe disability, doctors tend to think that we're already dying. And so any efforts to prolong our lives sometimes are met with perhaps not resistance, but some reluctance, because they almost think that our quality of life is not as good as theirs to begin with, or as good as that of a non-disabled person. So they think very often of assisted suicide as something that they would do out of compassion. And unfortunately, there's a disconnect there between what is really the compassionate thing, which is saving our lives, versus the not as compassionate thing, which is helping us to lose hope and end our lives. So that's one of the arguments already. And then compounded with that is the reality that a lot of us with disabilities may need lifelong supports, services, medical treatment, and this can be expensive. So when you introduce the idea of assisted suicide into a healthcare system that's already looking at how to cut costs and how to make the budget work in our ever more austere times, it's just a dangerous mix of concepts, because actually death is cheaper than life, but that doesn't mean that should be our goal. Life should still be our goal. So there's the whole thing about how expensive it can be to treat someone versus just ending it. Another thing you need to know is that in the states where assisted suicide is already legal, especially Oregon, which has the longest history in the United States and so the most available record keeping, the reasons that people give for wanting to pursue assisted suicide are really not about pain. When you look at the statistics, only about a third of people, and often less, are asking for it because of either real pain that they're in or pain that they're even afraid of being in later on. The things that people cite as reasons are being less able to engage in activities that they once found enjoyable. This past year, that was 90%. Loss of autonomy, that was 86.7%. And loss of dignity, which is 72.3%. And year after year after year, these are the same three concerns that are always at the top of the list of reasons. So those are not reasons related to pain. They are reasons related to disability. And so that's where we need to put our attention, is on, yes, alleviating pain, but also alleviating emotional pain, isolation, and despair. There's also the issue of discrimination. When you set up a two-track system where some people will receive suicide assistance and other people receive suicide prevention, that is an inherently discriminatory system, because how do you decide then who should be supported in committing suicide and who should be persuaded away from it? And finally, there's the whole issue of expansion. Sure, proponents say that assisted suicide would only be available to people who are terminally ill, adults with about 6 months left to live, and they talk about all the safeguards they would put in place to do that. But inevitably, it will expand. It will expand to people with Parkinson's, who have a longer trajectory in their illness. It will expand to people with dementia. Barbara Coombs-Lee said years ago when she was in Connecticut, she was the first one to spearhead the what's called Death with Dignity law in Oregon. She said that the plight of people with dementia is an issue for another day, but no less compelling. So that doesn't mean no. That just means later on we're going to work on that. And every year states that already have assisted suicide are working to remove the safeguards and to expand the eligibility to more and more groups. So these are a few of the things to keep in mind when you're talking with legislators. We really appreciate your good work on this, and good luck with your education efforts. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks to Cathy for that. God bless her for all the work that she's doing. And as I said before, if you have any questions, please keep them coming in. There will also be there's a handout that Cathy helped put together that should be in the chat box that should inform you more on the issue. Now, last but far from least, from the Family Institute of Connecticut, Christina Bennett has, she's actually spoken at a number of the March for Life youth rallies of the last couple of years. And I, unfortunately, had been the one to precede her. And if you have ever heard her speak, you never want to be the one speaking after her, because everybody always forgets you from speaking. And I'm really grateful. He's actually on my board because of the high respect that we have for all that he does and that the Family Institute does. But I'd like to hand it over now to Christina Bennett. was on mute.
Can
Oh.
you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom and Cathy and Lisa and everyone who's spoken thus far. I'm really grateful that I'm able to be here and represent the Family Institute of Connecticut. I'm the communications director, as Tom stated, and Peter Wolfgang is our executive director. And we are really honored to be a part of this. We've been working, behind the scenes in order to, to make this happen. And we're really grateful to everyone who is tuned in today. Thank you so much for taking your time out to listen to what we have to say. So, if you're not familiar with the Family Institute of Connecticut, we do a lot of things. We have a 501c3. We also have a 501c4, which is the Family Institute of Connecticut Action, where we're able to lobby and we're able to, encourage people and to help people and to train people and to equip people and how to reach their elected officials. We testify against the assisted suicide bills. We testify against the anti-pregnancy center bills. We go to the LOB, we meet with people, we do rallies, we do so many things. So if you're not familiar with what we do, please get connected with us, and I'll tell you how to do that in a minute or so. But, we're facing a crisis in Connecticut. We know that. We know, unfortunately, that we are one of the least pro-life states in the country. We see different bans happening across the country in southern states. And in Connecticut, every time there's an opportunity for abortion to be celebrated by our elected officials, like Governor Ned Lamont and, unfortunately, pro-abortion officials, they celebrate it. But in spite of that, I want you to know that the pro-life movement in Connecticut is thriving. The pro-life movement in Connecticut is growing. We are alive, we are present, we are here, and we are making a difference. And so I want you to know today that there is hope and that we're making great strides. Even with the pregnancy center movement, their doors are open. They're meeting with clients. And even in the midst of a global pandemic, they're still meeting the needs of women by providing them diapers and clothes and everything else. And just before everything shut down in Connecticut, we were at the Capitol and we were testifying and we were speaking to legislators. And I found that there was a good number of people, elected officials, who are with us, who are tired of these bills, who can tell that the anti-pregnancy center bill is just discriminatory. They can see through it. They know it's about politics. They know that they're not really women that are being, misled by pregnancy centers. And so, there's a saying that there's more with us than there are against us. And I want you to know that even though it may not seem that way in Connecticut, there really are a lot of people, thousands of people that are with us. And so we have reason to be encouraged. So if you've not been involved in the past and you want to get involved, I want to give you a couple of ways that you can do that, both when it comes to, the assisted suicide fight and as well as, the pregnancy center movement and the pro-life movement in general. So first of all, I want to ask you, if you are a person of faith, to pray. Please pray. Prayer moves mountains, and we are facing battles that are in the natural, but they're also spiritual battles, I believe. And so I would ask you guys to please pray for the Connecticut Pregnancy Care Coalition, disability rights activists, us here at FIC, as well as all of your elected officials. In addition to that, get informed. Do you know who your state rep is? Do you know who your state senator is? Do you know their names? Have you ever had a conversation with them? Do you know where they stand on assisted suicide? Do you know where they stand on the pro-life issue? If you don't know, it's really easy to find that out. All you have to do is just really use Google. You can go to the Connecticut website, which is cga.ct.gov, and they have something on their website called Find Your Legislator. So you can go on there, you put your address in there, and they will tell you who your state reps are and who your state senators are. So once you do that, then you want to go onto their Facebook pages, their Instagram accounts, and their Twitters. And you want to find out, are they pro-life? Are they pro-abortion? Where do they stand? How have they voted? Before this pregnancy center bill was the Senate bill, it was a House bill. So it was HB 7070. So you can even go back and see, okay, how did they vote last year with HB 7070? If you've never reached out to them before, this is a great time to do that. You know, obviously they're not at the Capitol, but they're still reading emails, they're still connecting with people, and so you can do that. I also ask you to please, please, please be connected with us at the Family Institute of Connecticut. And you can do that in a number of different ways. One way is to follow our e-blast. So you go to our website, ctfamily.org, and you can sign up on our website, www.ctfamily.org, for our e-blast. Peter Wolfgang sends out the best e-blast. They're informative, they're engaging, they're punchy, they're great. So you can go online and sign up for those e-blasts. In addition to that, please follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook, because we're going to give you the most important information about what's going on, what we're doing, and how you can get involved. And many times we'll also send out links for you to personally contact your legislators, and we'll often give you a script and what you can say, and then you can edit a little bit. Right now, what we're asking is that you would talk to your elected officials and say that we do not want any non-essential bills to be voted on right now. We are in a time of a global pandemic, and we need only the most important things to be voted on. And so we're asking that they would just put to the side right now, put a pause on all non-essential legislation, which is the anti-pregnancy center bill and also the assisted suicide bill. In fact, I would also say, if you feel led to say that, it's very clear that women across the country right now are hurting and they're looking for help. There's a shortage of diapers, there's a shortage of formula, and there's a shortage of resources, especially for pregnant women. There's articles about this, you can Google it. So we don't need any kind of legislation that would hinder women from going to places where they can get the resources that they need, especially when it's hard for them to find that at Walmart, it's sold out at the grocery stores, and the pregnancy centers many of them are open and serving women. So they don't need to deal with this legislation. So we're asking that you would contact your legislators and tell them that. In addition to those things, getting involved with us, we ask that you would just, talk to your community members. Obviously we know that you can't go to the Capitol right now, and you can't walk into your church and, make an announcement, but you can use social media. You can use, your phone and your email, and you can let people know, hey, this is going on. Just because there's a global pandemic, it doesn't mean that it's stopped. They're still wanting to pass these things, and we really need your help. And so, I think one of the last things I want to say to you guys is, if you don't know my personal testimony, my mother scheduled to abort me in Hartford, Connecticut, and she walked out because a janitor talked to her at the 11th hour. When she was in the hospital robe, a janitor talked to her and told her that God would give her the strength to have me. And she walked out. She held that as a secret until I was in my 20s. And then she revealed it to me, and that's what drew me into pro-life work. And I've been in pro-life work ever since my 20s, and now I'm almost in my 40s. I've been fighting for the ending of abortion. And so I want you to know that no matter what your story is, when we were planning the March for Life in Connecticut, we're working with women who are post-abortive. We're working with women who have chosen to be foster moms, and we're working with people who've adopted. We're working with people who are birth mothers who've placed their children for adoption. You all have such important stories. Some of you volunteer at the pregnancy center. Some of you are, you help out in different practical ways when it comes to women and families. And some of you care about politics a lot, and you love to talk to your elected officials. Whatever your role is, whatever you do, I want you to know that you have a place in this pro-life movement, that you are important, that you are valuable, that you have a story to tell and to share with people, and we need you. We need your voice. We need you to knock on the doors of these legislators. We need you to call them. We need you to raise your voice, because that's what it takes. We need a moral outcry in Connecticut so that the elected officials know that we mean business, that we are not going to allow this state to continue to have a death decree. We're not going to look the other way. We're not going to be silent. We're going to raise our voices on behalf of the voiceless and on behalf of women and men who are hurt by abortion. So thank you again so much for joining with us. And if you want to be connected with us, again, Facebook, Family Institute of Connecticut Action, YouTube, myself, Christina Bennett. You can find me on social media. You can find me on Instagram. If you have any more questions, even after this, I would love to connect with you. So thank you, and God bless.
All right, thank you. See, she did not disappoint. Thank you, Christina. And I also want to point out that the Connecticut Catholic Conference, if you check out their website as well,
Yes.
for more information, as well as Lisa's website, with both being the Connecticut Pregnancy Care Coalition. And I just want to pick up on two things before we get to the Q&A on some things that Christina said. One is on the on connecting with social, especially social media, since that's what we're all doing right now. When I normally do these 101s, Capitol Hill 101s up on the Hill, and I have members of Congress come and help me out, I had one member of Congress, Jim Banks from Indiana, a friend of life, congressman from there, who pointed out all of his colleagues are on Twitter. Their staff and all might run their Facebook, and you should still contact them through those ways. But I found more and more that when I'm connecting, trying to connect with a legislator, if I direct message them on Twitter, I'm getting a much quicker response. A phone call from a chief of staff or something saying like, oh, I heard you just said this on Twitter. So it's very important to do that. Now, the first question, either for Lisa or Christina, or perhaps both of you with this question, comes from Wesley. My local legislators are already against these bills. What else can I do?
I spotted that one and I thought, you know, good for him. You know, I mean, that's great that he knows that his legislators are against his bills. But I would reach out to those legislators anyway and encourage them. They're under a lot of pressure to, you know, for standing up for truth. And so I would, you know, take the time to send him a note, an email, whatever, a phone call, and thank him for supporting life, but and encourage him to stand up and ask how they can pray for them or how they can help.
Yes, and I would agree with Lisa, and I would say that, you know, things can change. Unfortunately, you know, my own legislators where I live in my particular city in Connecticut are also very pro-abortion. In fact, they one of my main legislators was on his wife was on the board of NARAL and very, you know, much in support of these anti-pregnancy center bills. But nevertheless, you can still continually reach out because things can change, and not particularly with that person that I mentioned, but with other people. I have seen change over the last couple of years, where last year I testified, some of the state legislators were in agreement, but it was more of a quiet agreement. And then this past time that I testified, I had people coming up to me in the hallway, letting me know that they were, you know, with us. And so just be like, there's a scripture in the Bible where it talks about a persistent widow, where she keeps on coming to the judge over and over and over again, and she's really demanding justice. Do that. And I'd also say that let them know that you don't just represent yourself. So if you're part of a church, if you're part of a synagogue, if you're part of a mosque, if you're part of a community group, when you go to your elected officials, let them know it's not just me, it's me and these, you know, 100 people that I'm connected with that are also against this. Because even if they don't personally care, sometimes they will feel that pressure knowing that, you know, they want to be reelected and they want to be pleasing to people in the community. And so sometimes you can let them know that that you have people supporting you and put the pressure on that way.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to emphasize here, and it's something we try to emphasize when we're talking to a national audience, is that try to approach them in a friendly manner, even when they oppose you. It's amazing how that's you have every right to be angry when we're advocating for the things that we do and the horrors that we're fighting against. However, when it comes to legislators, sometimes there's ego involved, sometimes there's other factors, except you get more with honey sometimes. And even if you're just talking to the legislator or the staffer himself, they're more likely to listen to you if you don't go in there and start talking about how you pay their salaries, which you do, but instead talking about the issues itself and try to find some common ground before you get into the differences. Now, the next question is for Christina. How do you think we can change the dynamic of college pro-choice? As a recent graduate, this is the person asking the question, you might guess I am not a recent graduate. I have noticed this.
Great. Well, I love that question. So I just want to point out the fact that I'm wearing a t-shirt. I mean, not a t-shirt, a sweater, sorry. That says, I am the pro-life generation. On the bottom, it says Students for Life. So I'm going to give you my Students for Life plug. Students for Life is one of the best and the largest pro-life organization when it comes to college campuses, high school campuses, and even middle school. I'm a big supporter of them. Kristen Hawkins runs it. Tina Whittington is their vice president, and they are an amazing organization. I've spoken at multiple events, and they have they equip you. They have staff and people that help you to start a pro-life group on your college campus. So there is a pro-life group at Wesleyan, which is a very pro-abortion college campus. There was a wonderful student named Joy who started that, and I was right alongside with her during that process. There's one at UConn. I believe there's one at Fairfield University, and a few other schools. Yale has one called Choose Life at Yale, Clay. So one of the best ways to influence college campuses is to start a pro-life group on that campus. Even if it's small, even if you start with 2 or 3 students and you start gathering and you have meetings and maybe you watch a movie, maybe you watch Unplanned, and then you invite other people to come, and then maybe you go to the March for Life together, or you go to the Students for Life retreat and you come back. They have tons of resources to equip you in how to do that. And I would just say, don't despise the day of small beginnings. If you feel like, well, okay, I have a couple people that are pro-life, but the majority of my professors are pro-choice, that's okay. Just keep going. When I was in college, I went to Southern in New Haven, and I'm a Christian. And when I was in college, I was like always telling people about my faith, and people would argue with me, and even the professors would argue with me, but I didn't really care. I found that more and more people joined in with me, and I was a part of a Christian group, and so I had that unity, and I knew I wasn't alone. And so I would encourage you to do that. I think that's one of the best ways to change college campuses is by planting a pro-life group on campus.
And I agree with you, Christina. We work closely with Students for Life. They're a great, fantastic organization. And it's a great starting point for anybody wanting to get involved in the pro-life movement who's younger. Now, the next question is for Lisa. Now, and I know you're with the Carenet network, except how many pregnancy centers are in Connecticut? And can we get a list with contacts? Hopefully that question is in relation to so that they can help donate to your organization.
Yes, we always are looking for new donors. So I was texting with one of my colleagues on the Connecticut Pregnancy Care Coalition. There were some issues with our website, but we do have our Facebook page, which is up, and it has the list of pregnancy centers that are part of the coalition. And there are 11 pregnancy centers that are part of the coalition. But if you go to one of the optionline.org or pregnancy-decision-line.org, you can find a pregnancy center near you. There's going to be a listing on there, and that's going to have a more comprehensive list. And I think the other place to look at is the Birthright website that would also show you where the birthright centers are. Per their charters, they're not allowed to be part of our coalition, but they do great work. And so we do kind of sort of represent them when we're up there at the Capitol, because any negative legislation would affect them in addition to the other pregnancy centers. So those are the 3 different places that people can look to find the pregnancy center closest to them.
Now, this one is for either of you, or perhaps both of you. Could you please share the bill numbers concerning the pregnancy care centers and assisted suicide that would be voted on this session? If you can cite them by heart, you're much better lobbyists than I am. I bet they're probably on the websites though as well.
Yeah. So the pregnancy center bill is SB 144. and it's an act concerning deceptive advertising practices of pregnancy centers.
And the assisted suicide bill is HB 5420, and it's labeled an aid in dying bill.
They always have these deceptive names for their bills. They do it on the national level as well. Two important questions that might be open-ended considering the pandemic that we're in. The first question is, when is this legislation over and when would they be voting by? And secondly, there's an election this pro-life or run for legislator or support someone who is. Anybody want to take those?
Wait, I missed the second part of the last question about, can you repeat the
there's
second
an
part?
election this year. There's an election this year. How can a pro-lifer run for legislature or support someone who is?
Oh, okay. Well, I can answer that part. And then, Lisa, if you want to, you can answer the first part. Well, we don't really have an answer for the first part. We're not sure exactly.
Right.
We don't know. I mean, we've never been in this situation before. So, I mean, even Governor Lamont, I mean, at first he said, you know, everybody stay home until April 30th. And then he came back and said, you know, everybody stay home until May 30th. Just so you guys know, I'm fostering a little newborn baby boy in case you hear screaming in the background. So I hear him crying in the background. But so we don't really know for sure. But I can say when it comes to the second question, yes, we want people to run. We want people to get involved on the local level. One of the first things you need to do, if you haven't done this already, is make sure that you pick a political party. And so, like, that's what I did. I'm a Republican. So I'm not only a Republican, but I'm also a part of the Republican town committee in my city. So that's important. So, and, you know, in addition to picking a political party, you want to make sure that you're involved in your town committee, whatever party that you decide to be on. And you don't, you know, there are a lot of people that I know that are, you know, pro-life Democrats, and we could definitely use some pro-life Democrats in Connecticut for sure. So don't feel like, you know, you just have to choose one particular party. We need pro-lifers all across the board when it comes to Connecticut and this movement. So after you do that, you know, you want to go to their meetings, you want to get involved, because that would be how you would eventually, you know, be chosen amongst them, and they would choose you to run, and then, you know, they would help give you support and everything else. But you can also just start talking to people, start seeing if there's people in your community, you know, again, churches, organizations, people that would support you. It takes money to run for office. And so you're going to need to make sure that you have support so that you can raise donations. Again, when it comes to social media, a lot of what we see when people run for office, even on the local level, is that they are engaging people, you know, even in the mayoral races, you're seeing people are using, you know, paid advertising and things to get people's attention. And that's sometimes how they win races. Unfortunately, when it comes to the abortion, you know, industry and their lobby, you know, Planned Parenthood and NARAL, they put a lot of money behind trying to get their people into office. And so if you are wanting to run as a pro-life candidate, it's important, you know, be connected with the Family Institute of Connecticut. Call us, you know, we'll take you out to lunch. We'll talk with you, you know, get connected with as many people as possible so that when you do it, you know that you have a strong support team.
And as far as knowing, you know, those who are running, where they stand on the issues, one of the key things that I look at is who's endorsing them. You know, do they have endorsements from NARAL? Well, then I'm not going to, you know, I'm going to stay far away from them. Do they have endorsements from Family Institute? Because I know Family Institute, they do put out their list of candidates that they endorse. Then I'm going to take a second look at them. But first and foremost, you know, I point blank ask those in my area if they're running. I send them an email, or I go to one of their meetings where they, you know, are having conversations with constituents and say, you know, where do you stand on this, and ask them outright.
Great advice. And we have the same question up here when the legislative session is over. And I keep on, it is an open-ended question. And I hearken back to a famous Democrat, Will Rogers, used to say that people tend to feel that when Congress is in session, it's kind of like when a baby has a hammer. So there might be some positive to people staying at home if those people are sometimes elected officials. Now, here's a question that hopefully we can also address. It's one of the things we try to address is how to speak about the certain issues. I've heard many times that first trimester abortions are okay because the baby won't feel any pain or even realize they're being aborted, or even that it is alive yet. Do you have a good response I can use? I'm betting the both of you do.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. We definitely do. So, you know, I always tell people, you know, personally, like I mentioned before, I was scheduled to be aborted and my mom walked out of that abortion appointment. If she hadn't walked out, what would have happened? I would have been forcibly torn apart in the womb, and I would have been discarded like medical waste and thrown into the garbage and picked up by, you know, Stericycle or a medical waste company and brought to an incinerator, and that would have been the end of me. So when we think about the reality of abortion, this is a human rights issue. This is a civil rights issue. And it really doesn't matter if this is happening if this is an injustice and it's violent, then it doesn't matter if it's happening at 6 weeks or 16 weeks or 26 weeks. Now, of course, we know that the baby is more formed at 26 weeks than at 6 weeks. But regardless, the act of violence is the same. Now, there may be different instruments because obviously we know that with later term abortions, you know, it could be a 2-day procedure. And in the first trimester, you know, you can take a pill, you can take the RU486 pill. And so people sometimes think, oh, it's not so big of a deal. I'm taking a pill, you know, the baby's not fully formed. But that is not true, because life begins at conception. So the individual life is just as important. The human rights is just as in need of protection when the child is in the early stages of development compared to the later stages of development. And so I just always tell people, you know, whether I'd been aborted at 6 weeks or 16 weeks, either way, I would not be here. I would not be here to be married, to have a family, to be able to live out the calling that God has given me. And so we need to move away from thinking that it's okay. You know, we can't draw the line and say, oh, it's only okay in these circumstances, you know, compared to these circumstances. No, it's not okay in any circumstance, because abortion is a cruel act of violence and dehumanization against an innocent human being that needs to be protected.
I think it's also to kind of jump on what Christina was saying is, you know, is to have the conversation about the stages of human development. And we all go through the same stages of human development. And that early pregnancy is just one of the many stages that we go through throughout our life. And so, you know, kind of like it's okay at this stage, but not that stage, really doesn't pass the logic test.
And that's true when you're looking at end of life issues as well.
Oh yeah.
Human life from the very beginning deserves the dignity that God gave it. Mm-hmm. Now there's a question about, and I'll just take this one real quick. The Knights of Columbus are very pro-life. Are there more ways that FIC can partner with the Knights of Columbus, especially with Faith in Action Life? The Knights of Columbus really, if you've ever been to the March for Life, and they're helping us in the States as well, they are like the backbone of the March for Life, giving us the support we need. And a lot of times you'll see the guys in the white coats and the red kettles at the March for Life. And they're very supportive of everything we do. And it being Connecticut, and that is the home state for the Knights of Columbus, I'm assuming that they're all very involved. So I would just address as a single knight. I'm a Knight of Columbus myself. And there are always ways that you can make the effort. Now we only have time for one more question, but it's perfectly suited for both of you, except especially Christina, considering your new role recently. The question is, I gave up my daughter for adoption and would like to share my story in case it helps someone else. where's the best place to share my story?
All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for choosing adoption. That is really remarkable and selfless of you that you chose to place your daughter for adoption. So thank you for that. And I would say everywhere and anywhere, anywhere that people will listen. When I started sharing my personal story about being scheduled to be aborted, I was just sharing it with friends and sharing it at church events. And then the next thing you know, I was writing about it. And I actually do write for a pro-life organization called Live Action News that Lila Rose runs. And I've been writing for them for 6 years now. So that being said, if you would like to share your story with me, and if you would like for me to write your story or interview you for a news article, I'd be more than willing to do that. You can email me, Mrs. Christina Bennett at gmail.com, just my full name, MRSCHRISTINABENNETT at gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to interview you. I also have, social media, so I'd be more than happy to help put your story out there. If you wanted to share your story, I can share it on my Black Pro-Life Woman Instagram account, as well as other things. And I could talk with you a little bit more off of this, webinar about how you can do that. But yeah, I would just start with, if you, obviously we're all, social distancing right now. So I can't say, go to your church and give a testimony even if you are involved with the church. I don't know if you are, but practice maybe just sharing your story in like 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute. In addition, writing it down. You could even share your story with elected officials when it comes to these particular, the pregnancy center bill. You could even write your story in and say, because of what I chose, I want pregnancy centers to be able to be open and exist and be able to offer adoption for women that are in need as an alternative to abortion. So I would say, again, just start writing it down, start, getting comfortable with sharing it, and I can help you from there if you just, shoot me an email.
And I would say, all of those things are just great ways to get started. And, I would definitely recommend that you connect with Christina after this somehow. But one other way, is to kind of reach out to the pregnancy center near you and maybe talk with the staff there. They would love to hear how you got to that decision-making point, because it will help them in presenting the option of adoption to the clients that they're in front of. That's probably one of the toughest options to talk about with clients sometimes, because our world has made it such a closed option, such a terrible option. But to have positive stories to be able to share with our clients, that's tremendous. So I would, encourage you to reach out to your pregnancy center near you and just talk to the staff there, and encourage, so that they can be encouraged to continue to sharing that option with the women that come to them.
Great advice. And thank you. Thank everybody for joining us today. As I said, once we have a new date for the Connecticut March for Life, we will certainly get that out to you. And we'd also like some feedback about how this went. We'd like to continue these both in Connecticut and other states. And there is a lot of information to share. There's always something to talk about. So please share that. Again, I'd like to give a thanks to Connecticut Catholic Family Institute, Connecticut. To you, Lisa, and to Cathy. Hopefully she sees this. It's being recorded. Hopefully she sees this when she can. Thank you guys for all your wonderful testimonies. And thank everybody for joining us today. And I guess all I can say is march on, because we will.
Thanks.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.